Consent isn't always black and white. Of course, no always means no, and the minute someone says no, the sexual contact must stop.
However, a lot of the cases that Christina and I deal with involve a lot of gray. In our experience representing students, it's where there's miscommunication. One person thinks they're consent, and another person thought that they communicated that they wanted to stop.
So what is consent? Consent is knowing and voluntary permission to engage in sexual activity.
It must be given at each and every aspect of a sexual interaction with someone. It can be very embarrassing and seem unnatural, but it's like a game of Mother May I.
So really what that means is, may I do X, may I do Y, and so on and so forth. Again, it can feel unnatural, but it's really essential for purposes of avoiding any sort of miscommunication.
When you talk a lot, you comply with those schools who have affirmative consent policies. That means there must be a resounding yes to each stage. But some schools don't have affirmative consent, or if they do, they allow consent to be conferred by nonverbal behavior. And that's where things get really confusing.
You can't give consent when you're incapacitated.
You can't because you don't know the who, what, where, why, and how. That's really scary when someone's incapacitated, but the confusion comes in. Is there a difference, Christina, between incapacitation and intoxication?
Under campus Title IX policies, absolutely. Essentially, a student can confer valid consent when the student's drunk, but not when the student is incapacitated.
So check in with your partner. Make sure they're feeling okay. Ask them, are you too drunk? Do you know where you are? Are you sober enough to consent? Do you need water, or should you go home and we should call it a night?
I think another really important aspect of consent is the idea that consent to past sexual contact does not translate to consent to future sexual contact. So if you've had sex 100 times, on that 101st time, you still need to ask for consent.
We have a lot of hookup cases. Not unusual for college cases, right, Christina?
That's right.
But especially if you're going to meet someone on Tinder or another app, or just meet someone for the first time in a bar. Remember, that person is a stranger. That requires more communication. What does a hookup mean to the other person? Hooking up to one could be just kissing. Hooking up to another person could mean sexual intercourse. Communication is key.
We always say that it's important with that communication to really have an understanding of expectations between the sexual partners. And again, particularly when you're having sexual activity with a stranger, it's really important in those instances to be mindful about consent through words and actions.
If you're comfortable enough to take off your clothes, you need to be comfortable enough to communicate and make sure you have consent.